Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about new polling coming out of New Jersey and Virginia regarding the governor's races and how they seem to be tightening. And then I want to talk a little bit about Trump's approval ratings and polling that may give us a little bit of a sneak preview of how the 2026 midterms might go. But before we get into that, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, also available on Apple Podcast and Spotify. The show should also be coming to Rumble soon. I'm working on that. It's a little difficult. I'm not going to get into why. And also subscribe to the website. So whenever we have an article that goes live, it gets emailed to you directly. I would really appreciate it. So I did an article this morning about the tightening. We've gotten some new polls that show that New Jersey and Virginia might be tightening. I'll read you some of the article and we'll break it all down. Republicans in New Jersey and Virginia appear to be gaining real momentum as the governor's races head into the final stretch. New polling from Insider Advantage and Trafalgar Group, two of the most accurate firms in recent election cycles, show both contest in a statistical dead heat. Now, for those who don't know, Insider Advantage and Trafalgar, they're two separate polling firms, but they tend to do polls together, and they've been two of the most accurate polls the past election cycles. They are one of the only few polling firms that showed Trump consistently with the lead during the 2024 election cycle, even when Kamala replaced Biden. Because a lot of polls after the switcheroo showed Kamala taking the lead, not just nationally, but in many swing states. And they were criticized for that. I mean, you have all these retarded election quote-unquote analysts, people like Greg Elliott and Nate Silver, both of former 538 fame, discounting Insider Advantage and Trafalgar as partisan polling outlets when it's like they've been some of the most accurate ones. And they'll never criticize polling firms like Quinnipiac and the New York Times polling, Siena, when they consistently overrate Democrats. But because the heads of Insider Advantage and Trafalgar go on Fox News to talk about their polling, somehow that makes their polling not credible. It's ridiculous. The reason is a lot of these, again, I say in quotes, election analysts on the left, they just discount Insider Advantage and Trafalgar because they're accurate, and they oftentimes don't underestimate Republicans like many of the more traditional establishment polls do. But anyway, as you can see here, the Insider Advantage only has the Democrat up a point versus Jack Ciattarelli. And I'm going to read you more of that. In New Jersey, the Democrat candidate, Mickey Sherrill, leads Republican Jack Ciattarelli by just 1 point, 45.4% to 44.3%. Meanwhile, in Virginia, Democrat Abigail Spanberger holds a narrow 2-point edge over Republican Winsome Earl Sears, 47.5% to 45.3%. Republicans now look like the outright favorite in the Virginia Attorney General's race, as Jay Jones has refused to offer a meaningful apology for his comments. With Democrats seemingly unwilling to replace him, the Republican candidate is now favored to win in the betting markets and in several polls. For those who don't know, and I should have gone into more detail in the article, I'll probably have to add that, but I've talked about it before. Jay Jones was caught texting about how he wanted to kill his Republican opponents, if you can believe that. And literally, he was saying how he wants to kill Republicans because that's the only way Republicans can learn about how terrible they are, I guess. I mean, Virginia is a weird state, man. I mean, they elected a woman who got caught doing porn back in 2023. She's a state congresswoman. She got caught doing porn with her, at least it was her husband. At least I think it was her husband. I hope it was her husband. She got caught doing porn, and she still got elected anyway. Maybe that's what Kamala should have done. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe Kamala should have done a couple racy videos. Maybe that's how she could have got. I'm just kidding. Let's not get into that. Let's change the subject. I don't know. Maybe that's the way for women to get elected. I'm kidding. So you can see, I'll change the subject. So as you can see here, Virginia, as I was saying, from the Trafalgar and Insider Advantage, the Republican candidate's only down 2. And in the Attorney General's race, the Republicans now leading by about 5. lieutenant general, or lieutenant governor, I should say, the Democrat. It's basically tied. The Democrat has a 0.1% lead, which is interesting. Also, a new Fox News poll in New Jersey showed Sherrill ahead by 5 points, which is a bigger margin, but that still represents a 3-point improvement for Chitterelli compared to its previous survey. The overall trend suggests that Republicans are closing the gap in both traditionally blue states. As you can see here, Chitterelli's improved by 3 since their last poll, and he's only down 5. Now, the problem in this poll for Chitterelli isn't even so much the top line number, it's really the fact that Sherrill leads him on all the key issues, including energy costs, which is a big deal in New Jersey. Energy costs have gone crazy. And that's probably, why Chitterelli's pretty competitive, because again, these are blue states. Let's not pretend, let's not forget that New Jersey and Virginia, they're not swing states. They're not true swing states. Virginia was arguably a swing state back in 2012, but even then, it really went from a solid red state to a solid blue state in one election cycle. Obama flipped in 2008, and Virginia's never gone back. It's not like a deep blue state like California. I mean, you can win it as a Republican in a good year, like Governor Youngkin was able to do. But it's very difficult. It's not easy. Because it is a blue state. Trump did better, but he lost it by 6 in 2024, and he lost it by 10 in 2020. So Virginia is a very tough state for a Republican. But what's driving this shift? Why are Republicans seemingly improving in the polling and gaining some momentum? As I was saying, in Virginia, Democrats are dealing with the controversy over Jay Jones, talking about wanting to kill Republicans. And Spanberger has not clearly condemned the comments. I mean, she was confronted about the comments at the recent debate by Sears, and Sears did an okay job. I'm not a big fan of Sears, but I prefer she'd win. She's sort of a never-Trumper, which is why I don't like her, but it is what it is. And Sears did a pretty good job confronting Spanberger, asking her to denounce. And she really wouldn't denounce, full-throatedly, which was interesting. What's really interesting is Democrats haven't replaced Jay Jones. I don't understand why they wouldn't do that. What are you losing by replacing this? I mean, I think Democrats think it's okay. I think there's a segment, and we've seen this with Charlie Kirk, I guess. There's a segment of the Democratic Party who thinks it's actually sort of normal and okay to fantasize about killing your opponents, believe it or not. I think Democrat voters sort of are okay with it. And I think the politicians are sort of okay with it. This is a sick party. There's no question about that. But again, particularly in Virginia, which is already a weird state. Probably because it's so close to Washington, D.C., where all the freaks live, That's part of the reason why Virginia turned blue, is all the people who work in D.C. moved into Northern Virginia, and all those former Republican rich suburbs became Democratic rich suburbs. So there you go. But that's not the only new polling data we've gotten. We also got the new polling regarding Trump's approval rating. A new Emerson College poll, and Emerson College is a very good poll. They showed Trump's approval rating holding steady at 45%. His disapproval rating did tick up a point to 48%, but that's pretty, 45% approved to 48% disapproved. That's pretty standard for a president and is well into his second term. And more importantly, on the generic ballot, Democrats are only up by 1, which is sort of interesting. And also, as you can see here, Trump's approval rating, which was minus 16 in April in handling Israel and Hamas, is now plus 13, which is good news. And peace is popular. Peace is popular. And I'm not going to get into this directly, but speaking of peace, it looks like Trump may be meeting with Putin for a summit in a couple weeks. He had been threatening tomahawks that he may be sending to Ukraine. And obviously Russia doesn't like that. They don't want that. And the problem with sending tomahawks is, my understanding is, you can equip nuclear warheads on the tomahawks. So if Trump gives tomahawks to Ukraine and Ukraine starts sending tomahawks into Russia, starts launching them into Russia, if you're Russia, are you just going to assume there's no nuclear warhead on those tomahawks? I wouldn't do that. So there's a big risk of escalation if Trump actually starts sending these weapons to Ukraine. So, I'll probably do a podcast about it tomorrow because I'm going to want to wait to see what happens in Trump's meeting with Zelensky today. But I'm not sure what Trump's strategy is with the Ukraine war now. I thought after the Putin summit in Alaska, Trump was slowly pushing the responsibility of the war onto Europe and Ukraine, obviously. And Trump was trying to distance himself from any responsibility because Trump came to the conclusion, which I've come to, that the war is sort of unsolvable because Russia has a set of demands that the West is not willing to accept, and Russia's winning the war, so if they're not going to accept Russia's demands, Russia's going to keep fighting and keep taking more territory. Russia, again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds yet, but Russia wants Ukraine to be disarmed offensively so they can't strike Russia. They want Ukraine to be permanently neutral, meaning no NATO membership. And they want Ukraine to, what's the third? I'm blanking on the third one now. I had to re-record this podcast, by the way. For some reason, the audio wasn't working, so my brain's a little fried. And they want, like I said, anyway, I'm not going to belabor the point. But they have a set of demands that the West is not willing to meet. That's the point. And because of that, there can't be a peace deal. There can't be a peace deal because of that. And I should say, I remember the third thing. The third thing is they want the West to recognize all the territory Russia has taken and that Ukraine's never going to get it back. They want it to be recognized, like Crimea, as Russian territory. That's the third demand. So, but the West is never going to agree to that. The West wants a ceasefire so they can help, Ukraine, recoup and regroup and sort of refund and restock Ukraine's weaponry. So when the ceasefire ends, which ceasefires often end, Ukraine's in a better position to keep fighting. But Russia doesn't want a ceasefire because they're winning the war, and a ceasefire, as I said, only helps Ukraine sort of rearm. So both sides are just not going to agree. So I thought I think Trump would agree to Russia's demands, but he's not going to force a peace deal down the Ukrainians and the Europeans' throat. So I sort of thought that Trump was sort of like kind of trying to wipe his hands from the conflict and push the responsibility to the Europeans. But then lately, Trump's been talking about Ukraine gaining their territory back. As I said, talking about sending more money and sending tomahawks. So it's been unclear to me what Trump's strategy is on Russia-Ukraine. But anyway, we'll talk about that more probably tomorrow. And hopefully Trump makes it clear to Zelensky he's not getting no tomahawks. We do not need escalation. I'm getting onto a tangent. We also have a new poll from RMG Research that has Trump at his highest point ever in the poll, 52% approve to 47% disapprove, which again is very interesting. That's a good sign for not only these upcoming elections in New Jersey and Virginia, but obviously 2026. And I'm going to read you more from my article. If Republicans manage to win one or even both of these governor's races, it would be a clear sign that the country is warming up to Trump's leadership and Republican governance heading into 2026. This tightening comes as former President Donald Trump's, now current President Donald Trump, I don't know why it says that, remains steady nationwide. A recent Emerson College poll shows Trump at 45% approve to 48% disapprove, with a new RMG Research survey recorded at its highest yet at 52%. There was an outlier poll from AP Norc that had Trump's approval rating at 37%, which is just not accurate. There's no way that's right, and we know that's not right because if you look at these generic ballot polls, like we just got from CNBC, Trump's approval rating, Democrats are only up 1 in the generic ballot, and Republicans have improved by 4 since August in the same poll. As I also mentioned, the Emerson College poll had Republicans only down 1 also in their generic ballot poll. And you want to remember, back in 2017, the same point during Trump's first term, many of the generic ballot polls for 2018 had Democrats already up 7 to 8 points. Like the blue wave that hit the country in 2018, you saw it coming back in 2017. We're not seeing any signs of a blue wave yet in 2025 for 2026. We're seeing signs that maybe the country is shifting maybe a point or two to the Democrats, but we're seeing Republicans being very competitive in these generic ballot polls. And the fact that most polls shows Trump's approval rating in the mid-40s, which is much higher, believe it or not, than he was during his first term, shouldn't be surprised. So the first real test for 2026 and the first meaningful clue about Trump's current popularity will come this November when voters in New Jersey and Virginia head to the polls. So, a lot of interesting data that we've gotten today. It does look like the New Jersey and the Virginia races are getting closer. Trump's approval rating is steady, We did have that outlier poll that had him in the 30s. But I forgot to mention, the real reason this poll is bullshit from AP Nork, first off, terrible track record. They had Kamala leading by like 5 or 6 points nationally during the 2024 election. But if you look at the GOP, they have Trump at a minus 11 with GOP voters. That's obviously bullshit. Trump is not minus 11 with people who are part of the GOP. That's nowhere near the case. That's obviously bullshit. And they have him minus 14 in immigration. It's a garbage poll. And again, if Trump's approval rating was really that low, you wouldn't be seeing the generic ballot for 2026 be so close in many of these other polls. So, like I said, we're seeing some movement in favor of the Republicans. Trump approval is holding steady in the good polls. And the generic ballot is close. All good signs for the GOP and Trump moving forward. Anyway, that's it for today. Again, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube or, like I said, podcast form on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. The show should be coming on Rumble very soon. I'm working on it. And again, subscribe to the website so you get updates when I have articles going live. I would really appreciate it. Anyway, folks, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.